Hey guys, I just wanted to give you some follow-up notes on simple random samples, and this is going to follow our Beyonce lesson, which looked a little at this topic itself. So there really aren't too many notes on this section, but I wanted to go ahead and go through these with you. Um, Simple random samples, that's what we talked about when you pick random words or random students within George Mason High School or things like that. So um, a simple random sample of size n is a sample chosen in such a way that every group of the individuals of the population has an equal chance of being selected in the sample. So it is an extremely fair way of surveying, creates a fair sample, which is really important. And in an SRS, each sample of size n has the same chance to be chosen, which is really important. This implies that each member of the population has the same chance of being chosen for the sample. So I could randomly select 100 of the 800 Mason students or something like that. All right, we can use technology to choose an SRS. This is especially helpful when the population is large. All right, so the first thing you'll do is label, which gives an individual in the population a distinct numerical value, labeled 1 to n, where n is the number of individuals in the population. So if I was doing George Mason High School, I might have, let's say there's 800 roughly, so I could do 1 to 800, and each individual student would be given a number. Then I can randomize, which uses a random number generator to obtain n different integers. So if I went from 1 to 800 and I wanted to select 50, this is the first person, this is the last person, and this is how many I want to select. Actually, how many to select. Okay, and then choose the individual that corresponds to the selected integers. So I might say 1 to 800, spit out 50 numbers, and it's going to give me 3, 27, 52, 123, 124, and it's going to give me 50 of those, and then I would look at a roster and find the students that correspond to that. All right? What's important to know when choosing a simple random sample, you make the selections without replacement. Once an individual is selected for a sample, you cannot be selected again, right? So like if I selected you for an example problem in class, you wouldn't get selected again, okay? However, most random number generators generate with replacement, so it's important that you explain that repeated numbers should be ignored when using technology. There's tons of random generators available on the internet, including www.random.org, and your TI calculator will do one as well, which is quite nice. All right, so there was an activity about Federalist Papers and choosing words. This shows similarly to the Beyonce. The first graph shows the random sample using a generator. The second one shows the student sample, which had a much higher cluster in terms of the mean value. So, sampling variability. The fact that different random samples of the same size from the same population produce different estimates is called sampling variability. So, the more data you have, the smaller the variability. Because the more data you have, it will be truer to the average in general. So that's good. You want more data. If I only choose 5 people for a survey, there's going to be a lot of variability. Think back to when we did the Parkinson's lab. Someone got 2, someone got 8, someone got 6. If I only have 5 choices, it's not really easy to get an average from that. Okay? So sample means vary, even though the samples are selected from the same population. We can reduce sampling variability by larger sample size, and that's what I just wrote above. So larger sample size, smaller variability. Okay? So in this first diagram, you can see n equals 5, and then in the second one, there was n equals 20. So the sample size was, we picked 20 words. So it was much bigger than when we picked 5 words. Okay? The purpose of a sample is to give us information about a larger population. The process of drawing conclusions about a population on the basis of sample data is called inference, because we infer information about the population from what we know about the sample. Okay? So we talked about that on the very first day. A sample represents the population. So you collect data from a representative sample, and then you make an inference about a population. So from our data we're collecting, then we can take and make an inference about the bigger population. Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward question that you might be asked is, how do you select a simple random sample? So what proportion of students at your school use Twitter? To find out, you decide to survey a simple random sample of students from your school. Describe how you could select 50 students. So you would give each student a number or a distinct label, as it may be called. And then, so like we would say from 1 to 800, and then use a random number generator and choose 50. Okay, and I'll show you a random number generator. Will your sample results be the exact same as the true population? No, because different samples will produce different results. Okay, and which would be more likely to yield a sample result closer to the true population, an SRS of 50 or an SRS of 100? Well, the bigger your sample, the better you have. So like we said before, increasing sample size reduces variability. So you always want a bigger sample if you can have one, that's for sure. All right. Here is how you can choose an SRS on a graphing calculator, okay? So you go to Math, and then PRB, then RandInt. So Math, probability, then random integer is what that stands for, okay? And so if we were talking about our previous example, we would put in here 1, 800, 50. So my first student all the way up to my 800 student, and I want 50 random integers selected, okay? So when you press enter, it will give you a very large result. Okay, so it would give you 50 random integers. All right, this was the example of the Federalist paper. Since we're doing the Beyonce Lab, I'm not going to look at this. But for example, let's say I wanted to choose 10 words out of the Federalist paper word list. Notice there are 130 words, so I would say 1 to 130, and I want to choose 10 words. And it will spit out numbers for me. It will spit out 2, 10, it'll spit out whatever it's going to give me, okay, all the way until I get 10 samples. So I'm just going to make these up, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and let's say 130. Let's say it spit out those numbers. So then I would take number 2, and I would come up here to number 2, and that's what? And I would take number 10, and I would go to number 10, and I would use those words as my sample, okay? So also, do me a favor, if you don't have a graphing calculator, back up here, we highlighted it, the website of, where is it? Right here, random.org is a random integer. It will do the same thing that your graphing calculator will do if you don't have a graphing calculator handy. Okay, so you can always use one on the internet as well. Okay, I hope these notes made sense, and feel free to reach out with questions, and there will be a homework assignment over 3.3. It's a pretty short homework assignment. I think it's only about maybe 6 or 7 questions. So your homework is 3.3 online textbook. Have a great weekend.